Hi everyone, I'm a girl now. Yippee! It's been a while since the last video, and I've let this channel rot for too long. I want to just post whatever I feel like on this channel now, which probably won't be Minecraft anymore. I plan to keep posting devlogs and maybe some Magic the Gathering content as well. Anyways, I wanted to start this video by explaining the general idea of the game I wanted to make. The idea is a roguelike with the sanity element. Low sanity causes enemies to become more powerful and spawns new enemies that are hallucinations. You'll lose sanity from picking up too many items, so you have to carefully manage your items in order to keep your sanity low. You'll also lose sanity as the game goes on, in order to keep the enemies hard as you keep getting further into the game. Honestly, I want Sanity to do a lot more, and the idea is still very much in the brainstorming phase, so give me suggestions for other things Sanity could do if you have any. The first thing I did was choose what I wanted the player character to be. I wanted it to be a fantasy theme, so the first character I chose was this dragon. After making sprites for it though, I realized they looked like shit, so I decided to try to make a slime character instead since it's a lot easier to draw and animate. First it looked like this, and then it looked like this. I wasn't happy with how these turned out, so I ended up trying a different approach to the art. Procedural animation. The idea behind this is instead of animating the character manually, I'd use code to create the animations instead. In order to procedurally animate a slime character, I need to simulate the slime that it's made out of. To do this, I started by making a script that evenly spaced points across the shape of the slime. The idea is that I would connect the points with springs in order for them to basically function as one big soft body. After connecting the points to their neighboring points with springs, and connecting them to the center of the slime, this was the result. It looks pretty good, but it broke really easily and definitely could do some work. I messed with it for a while to try to figure out a better solution, and eventually tried connecting each point to another spring that connected to where the point wants to be. This works so much better. It doesn't break anymore, and it looks great. Now that we have the points animated, we have to make it actually look like a slime. To do this, I started by using a sprite shape component in Unity to fill in the slime and give it an edge, and then added a line renderer to give the slime some shine. This looked a lot more like a slime already, but there's one problem. I was planning to make this game with pixel art, and this isn't pixelated at all. To fix this, I used a render texture to scale down the resolution of the slime, making it pixelated. So now we have a slime that we can animate, but no actual animations for it. To fix that, I wrote a script that applies forces to each point on the slime however I wanted to. After messing with the script for a while, moving looks like this. So much better than when I tried to animate it myself. Now that the slime is animated, I just animated a face over it to give it some expression. Now I have a player character, but there's nothing to actually do. To fix this, I need to add enemies that we can fight. The first thing I did was give the player the ability to shoot bullets with the arrow keys, so that we have something to use on the enemies. Now for the actual enemies. There's two different types of enemies that I think I want to implement in this game. Flying enemies that can fly over objects, and then grounded enemies that have to walk around objects. To actually implement this, I created a base enemy class that holds all the things that every enemy would have, like health, damage, and the ability to see the player. Then I created two more classes that will inherit from the base enemy class, one for each type of enemy. This way, when I want to create a new enemy, I just choose one of these classes to inherit from to handle all the default things associated with the enemy. The flying class is very simple. All it needs to do is move the enemy towards the player at a certain speed after the enemy sees the player. This was really easy to implement, and you can see that if we put the flying enemy script on an enemy in our scene, it works perfectly. There's one problem though. What if you want to change how the enemy moves, like we wanted to add the ability to dash towards the player? To fix this problem, I added a variable in our enemy class that determines whether the enemy is in a normal movement state or not. The flying enemy class just needs to check this boolean when it moves to make sure it's supposed to be using the default moving system. The grounded enemy class is a little more complicated. The grounded enemies have to interact with tiles in our scenes, and have to be able to pathfind around these tiles. To allow the enemies to pathfind, I used a pathfinding algorithm called A-star pathfinding. I'm not going to go super in depth about how this works, but I'll link the video I used to implement myself in the description so you can watch if you're interested. Basically, we have to find the tiles the enemy can walk on to reach the player the fastest. To do this, A-star pathfinder requires that we assign a value to each tile to determine which one is the best to add to the path. The value we will use is equal to the amount of tiles traveled from the starting tile, plus how many tiles away from the target tile the tile is. Using this value, we can just check for the best neighboring tile to the path by choosing the one with the lowest value. After doing this over and over again, we'll eventually find the path to the player if there is one. Now that we have the path, all we have to do to get the grounded enemy working is apply a force that brings the enemy towards the next tile on the path. As you can see, it works great. The enemy is able to follow the player even when there's tiles in the way. Now that we have the ability to create enemies, I made 3 of them. A zombie that just follows you around, a bat that dashes towards you, and a skeleton that can throw bones at you. Now that we have enemies and the player done, I need to make rooms that the player can travel through. To do this, I assigned each room to a scene in Unity, and loaded the scenes through code. Each room has a list of up to 4 neighboring rooms, which tells the game where to put doors between the rooms. When the player walks through a door, it will load the room corresponding to that door. Next is the items. Because this game is a roguelike, I'll need to have a ton of items, so I want the process of making an item to be as easy as possible. To do this, I stored every item as a scriptable object with values such as the item's ID, sprite, and the stats. The stats are stored as their own serializable class, so when I want to add stats to an item, I just have to go to the stats list on the item and add the stats there. Then, when I want to add an item to the game, I just have to add it to the list of items in my game manager class. Now that I can add items super easily, I added two. One is a damage ring that, well, gives you damage, and this circle that makes your dash do damage. I wasn't feeling that creative that day, okay? Okay, and that's all for the recap. Now I can get to the rest of the devlog. So the next thing I wanted to do was add some UI for the stats to show a stats multiplier, the stat itself, and then any additions or subtractions to the stat. First thing I did was just mess around with some text to see what I could make and see if I could get what I wanted to. Unity uses rich text, which means that I can format the text in a way that I can set things like the color and size of the text without having to make different text objects. Okay, this is what it looks like right now. All I have to do is write code that writes this for me. Okay, and after writing the code, this is what it looked like. Nice. It adds the stats. And then, oh, I don't like the 0 there, that's not good. Okay, so it looks good at first, but if you do it again, then it shows the zeros, which is not what we want. Thankfully, all it took was just changing a couple numbers to be negative in the code, and that was fixing it. Nice, okay, that works. The next thing I wanted to do was make it so that the green part of the text goes away over time. Okay, let's try it. So add the stats, and it has the green. Nice, and then it goes away. Okay, great. And if I hit it again, then it doesn't do anything. Perfect. Okay, there's one problem. It looks like it doesn't always have the 0.00 at the end of it, which I need to have. And after writing my own method to make the numbers into actual text, this is what it looks like. Okay, this should work now. Yeah, there you go. And you can see that the decimal points are on the multiplier as well. Perfect. Okay, so right now there's a problem that I'll have to dive a little bit into how the code works to explain. So basically, our code uses an async function, which is a function that can be run over multiple points in time. We use an async function so that we can call some of the code once the stat has been set, and then again when we want to get rid of the temporary text that shows the stats being increased or decreased. The problem is once we run this function multiple times, then the text will be cancelled while the other one is still running. So we can end up with situations where the text is cancelled early compared to when it should be. So the way that we would fix this is by cancelling the function whenever it's called like multiple times. Now after adding that to the code, this is what it looks like. As you can see, we can keep adding stats and it will never go away. Okay, so the next thing to do was to actually connect the stats to the stat UIs so that we can actually display the real stats on the screen. So the way that I started doing this was by making an enum for each different type of stat, so that way we know which type of stat is which. And then we can just set that in the inspector. And then the way that we actually access the stats from other places is we have a static list of all the stat UIs in this class here, and we can just add the stat UIs to the list using the enum as their index. Now that we've done that, let's see what it looks like. Okay, it looks okay. I just need to make it so that there's an outline on the text, because right now it's kind of hard to see what it says. Okay, that looks so much better. Apparently you can just add outline straight in Unity with the Text Mesh Pro component, so that was really easy. Nice. Now I just need to add some icons for the stats and then I'll be done. Okay, I added the images to the stats and it looks pretty good, except for this. It's supposed to be a boxing glove. So right now we have items in the game, but no actual way to pick them up, so let's fix that. Okay, so there's two different things I want the item to do. First of all, it needs to be able to bob up and down, and then it needs to be able to be picked up by the player. So the way I make it bob up and down is by changing the Y value of our position by the sine of the time. So that way we just make a sine wave that we can use to make the item move up and down. And then if we want to change the height, we can multiply a value by the outside of the sine function. And then if we want to change the speed, we can multiply by the inside of the sine function. Then we need the player to be able to pick up the items too. So the way we do that is having a pickup function that we call when we want the player to pick up the item. And all that does is add the item to the player's inventory and then destroy the item. Okay, I've made some new sprites for the item before that was just a circle, and now we can see if our items will work in the scene. Okay, yeah, it works. We have the item floating up and down. And then if I pick it up, I have the item and I can use it. Nice. So now we have the pickups, but no actual way in game to actually get those pickups. So let's make a chest that lets us pick up a random item. Okay, so here's how the chest is going to work. There's two separate true or false variables, one for if the chest is open and one for if the item has been picked up from the chest. The first thing that will happen when the player collides with the chest is we'll check if the chest is open, and if it's not, then we'll open the chest. The next time the player collides with the chest, the item won't be picked up, but the chest will be open so he can pick up the item. Okay, I made the chest, let's see if it works. Okay, we have the chest right there, and if I walk into it, our item spawns in. If I walk into it again, then I pick up the item. And I should have, yes, I have the dash item now. Nice. Okay, now I need to make it so there's a random item in the chest every time. Okay, so I made an addressable folder so I can access both of these items through code just by referencing their file path. So let's see if that works. Okay, there's the chest, and if I open it, you can see the item spawns in front of it. And then if I walk into it again, I pick up the item and I get the stats. Great. Okay, I changed around some of the values, and now picking up an item looks like this. So we have the item spawn in, and then we can pick it up. This looks pretty good, but there's still one problem. Right now the player is knocked back in the direction starting from the position of the chest and ending at the position of the player. The problem with this is that it results in the player being pushed to the side sometimes whenever we pick up the item. So instead I want to make it so that the player is pushed in a straight line. Okay, I changed the code so that now we check all 4 different directions to see which way the player is, and we just choose one of those directions. So if the player is to the right of the chest, they'll get pushed right. If they're to the left of the chest, they'll get pushed left, and so on. Let's see if it works. Okay, the chest is closed. Now if we open it from the bottom, we get pushed down. And if we push it from the side, we get pushed to the side. Nice. The next thing I wanted to do was to drop chests as rewards for clearing rooms. But first, I actually want to redo the whole room system entirely because the way it works right now sucks. So currently the way the rooms work is that each room is a separate scene in Unity, and then I have to load the scene individually, which works fine. But I want to have more control over the room transitions, and right now I can't really do that. So right now the room transition looks like this. But I kind of want it to swoop over from room to room. The way I want rooms to work right now is instead of having them all be stored as separate scenes, is to have them stored as a bunch of different game objects that I can load when I need to use them. Okay, I made a folder for our rooms so that we can store them, and I made them addressable, which means I can access them through code. Then I also gave them a tag that's called room, so that we can load all the rooms at once to choose which room to load. Then in the code we just load all of our rooms at once, and then choose randomly from those rooms to generate a level. Then we multiply their grid position by the scale of the rooms, so that they are all spaced out evenly in the right position, and then we generate them. And then once we've generated all the rooms, we can unload all of the rooms from RAM. Okay, so let's see if it works. Alright, so we have our rooms, and as you can see, they're all spaced out evenly and perfectly. Nice. Okay, so next I need to make the rooms actually connect to each other. So the first thing I want to do is just make it so that we delete the tile in front of where the door is going to be, so that the rooms are open for the player. So the way I went about doing that is I individually gathered each point where we want to clear on the tile map and put them into a list, and then that way I can just set the tiles of all the tile maps at these positions to clear them if there's a doorway there. And the way that we actually set the tiles to clear the doorway is we just go through each room and then go through each neighbor of the room, and if there's a neighbor there, then we can just set the tile to nothing. That way it'll open up the tile where we want the door to be. So let's see if that works. And as you can see, we have all our rooms and they have doorways in between all of them. Perfect. Next we need to actually add the doorways in between them. Okay, so now when we set the tile to clear out the doorway, we also spawn a door in that position. So let's see if this works. Okay, it looks like it didn't work because, oh, I forgot to set the doors in the inspector. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, the doors are there, but they're not in the right position. I think I need to add a little bit of an offset for them to work. Okay, add an offset to the doors. Let's see if that works. Alright, yeah, it looks like that all worked out fine. There's all the doorways. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is make the doors actually open and close. So to make them close, we have this method here that we call whenever we want to load all of our objects in the room. And what this does is basically it checks if the room is cleared, and if it's not cleared, then we close all the doors and we enable all the enemies. And then we also set the player's position based on the room they came from. Then we just call this method once we're done loading all the rooms. Then we have to have the doors actually open when we clear the room. So the way that we do that is we have a destroy enemy method in our game object manager class. The way it works is that we remove the enemy from the list, destroy the enemy, then if the enemy count is 0, meaning all the enemies have been destroyed, then we can clear the room, and this will open all the doors for us. Then we just have to call this method from the enemy class when we kill the enemy. Okay, so let's see if this works. Okay, so the door is closed when I started the thing. Then we can kill these guys, and the door is open. Great. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is to actually move the camera when we move rooms. So the way I plan on doing that is we have this method here that moves the camera, and it basically just takes a position and moves the camera to that position over a period of time. Then with that method we can just call it and move the position to our correct position centered around our origin, and then we should be able to have the camera move to the correct position. Let's see if it works. We go through here. Oh, it looks like it moved to the correct position, but then it just completely glitched out. What happened? Yeah, the camera's in the right spot, but it's not rendering anything for some reason. Okay, so I think what was happening is that I was accidentally moving the camera along the Z-axis, which should stay the same since we're in a 2D game. So I tried to fix that. Let's see if it works. Nice, it works. Now let's see if I can keep moving between rooms. Yes. Oh my god, it works. Yes, finally. Oh my god, that feels so good. Now that we have the new version of the rooms working, I want to have chests spawned as a reward for clearing the room. So to do that, I just generate a random value from 0 to 1, and I check if it's less than our room clear reward chance. And if it is, then we can just instantiate the chest. Alright, let's see if this works. Oh, it looks like I broke everything. We got a weird error, and we got no doors. Interesting. It looks like the prefab lost its doors, so I just gotta put the doors back in, and hopefully that should work. Okay, everything's back to normal, it looks like. Alright, we did not get a chest there. It's a 1 in 50 chance, so... What the fuck? Okay, let's crank the chance up to 100% so we can test it. Oh shit, okay, the chest spawned. Nice. So that time it worked. That time it didn't work? It should spawn 100% of the time. Let's try leaving in... Wait, does it reset the chest every time? Am I going crazy right now? What just happened? I'll have to look back on the footage. What? Okay, I just looked back at the footage and I think I have an idea of what might be happening. I think that maybe the chest is spawning in the starting room every single time, which would make sense since I don't think I changed its position. Okay, so now we actually changed the chest position based on the room that it's in. So let's see if that works. Okay, so the chest spawned in. And the chest spawned in. Perfect. I think it works. Okay, but with that done, that's going to be the end of the video. So tell me things that you want in the game and like and subscribe. Bye!